at scrum time today that although it is a contest, that at all times the safety of everybody is my most important priority. So what that means is every time we come to set up for scrum, we go through the same simple process so that everybody knows what to expect and can set themselves up accordingly. So scrum will start when I make a mark on the ground. From that mark as a hooker, if you can take half a metre back from that mark, and you can begin to set your 8 up around that mark. What I'm looking for early on is that our binding is nice and tight and that everybody is in and ready to go. Once we've done that, we'll then go to the first step of the call, which is for me to call crouch. What I'm looking for there is that as a front row and with your locks in behind you, that you come into a half set so that everybody is crouched and is in a position where they're leaning forward. From that point, once we're comfortable there, we'll call touch. What I'm looking for on the touch is that you extend your arm out to touch the point of your opponent's shoulder, but then it's really important that from there we bring that arm back. After the touch, there'll be a moment where I communicate pause, and then after that pause, we'll call engage. On engage, that's your opportunity to then come into scrum time. Now, it's really important that any time throughout there, if you feel unsafe or things aren't set up right, that you communicate that to me so that I can blow the whistle and we can start that process again. The last thing we want, though, is you down in a crouch and moving your head to try and communicate that to me. Just a nice loud yell. If I don't hear anything, then I'm going to take it that we're comfortable and we'll continue with the process. Okay, can we now just go through that just to make sure everybody's set and happy with that? So I'll call a mark for you. Here's your mark. Crouch, touch, pause, engage. Thanks, guys. Are you guys happy with that?
Yeah.
That's good. And you guys as reserves, you're happy to go with that as well when we come on? Yep. Excellent. Now, once we have done that, and they're nice and steady and we've got binds up, then we'll be asking that the ball's fed immediately. Just the last couple of really simple things. As a loose head today, can we just make sure that we hit slightly up and that you bind nice and early for me? And as a tight head, that you stay nice and square. If we do that, fellas, we'll have successful scrums.
Pre-match briefings are an opportunity for individual referees to outline their own refereeing style and briefly explain key points. But it is also important for the key safety messages to be delivered. At least 58% of all game injuries are from the tackle or the collisions between defenders and ball carriers. So, how can you referees help to make me safer in this part of the game? With all this going on, I need to know some good technique so that I can look after myself. I certainly don't want to be on the receiving end of actions like these. The IRB has recently reinforced the ruling, which essentially made it clear that tackles involving a player being lifted off the ground, tipped horizontally, and then either forced or dropped to the ground are illegal and constitute dangerous play. Referees are advised that for these types of tackle, they are to start at red card and work backwards. This type of action clearly has the potential for serious injury to occur and must be dealt with severely. Clearly, any tackle or attempted tackle above the line of the shoulders is potentially dangerous for the ball carrier. And even if the contact is initially below the line of the shoulders, if contact is made with the neck or head, the tackle is dangerous and therefore illegal and must be dealt with by the ref. And grabbing the ball carrier from behind by the collar is just as bad. Treat this the same as you would a high tackle, as it has just as much chance of causing injury.
There's no room for illegal play in our game, and it's important that the referee, the first step that he takes out on the field is to establish that for all the players. And that means setting standards nice and early at the first side of illegal play, actually stepping in and saying, what I've just seen is not acceptable and something needs to be done. And obviously we have a toolbox available, whether that's a long arm penalty or a caution and a yellow card for a temporary suspension or a red card with a sending off offence. We can use any one of those degrees in order to communicate that what we've seen is unacceptable.
One of the things we really desperately would like to see out of our game is a cheap shot. At the breakdown, we see it a lot. And I just want to demonstrate what we're talking about. Player goes over the ball, clean out guy comes, no arms, just has a cheap shot at our player's ribs. Coaches, players, if you're looking at this, ask yourself, is this what we want in our game? We risk injuring our player through a rib injury. We also risk this player being suspended. So have a wee think about it. The game's bigger than that. We as coaches and players are bigger than that. Let's do it right.
Scrum safety and correct technique is still an important feature of our game. Think about it. We talked before about being safe in the collisions that occur around the tackle area. Well, every scrum is effectively a collision involving 16 players. So let's make sure that we keep this part of our game safe too. In recent years, we've all managed to make this part of our game a lot safer, and that's because coaches, players, and referees all have a better understanding of the safest techniques. But let's not get complacent. Let's recap and share some key coaching points with All Blacks scrum coach Mike Cron.
When we engage, so for you flankers particularly, when we engage and make contact, the front row makes contact with opposition, we want all our feet in a certain position, or our body. What is it? Shoulder width apart, roughly in line. So you might start off split like so as a lock or a hooker or a number 8 or a flanker. But when the ref says engage, we release, so we end up roughly square, shoulder width apart, spine's roughly flat, and it's 120 degrees at the hip and thigh and 120 at the knee. So the head is in the neutral position, which means it's not up, it's not down, it's just as we stand as human beings. Spine flat, 120 degrees at that angle, 120 degrees at that angle, feet shoulder width apart, roughly square. That is the position we want when we hit. The next stage we're going to look at is speed. So we'll just go in individually. Would you like to give me a hand, please? Just good technique. Don't worry about power, just good technique. Crouch, touch, pause, engage. Beautiful. Now you can see the good angles that he's got. Well done, son. Thank you. The scrum machine is good for just doing what we did now, checking individual technique and speed. It's great for checking your speed and your technique and your hit, and it's very good for barring up, getting the aggression and the juices running. That's great. But I think that's all it's good for. After that, you've got to come off and do these drills, which will help you with your scrummaging. This won't teach you about how to stay strong with movement. Scrummaging is, we have to stay strong with movement, like in a game.
And remember what Chrono recommends. If I'm in the under 19 grade or below, I should be doing no more than 20 scrums on a scrum machine a week. Aim for quality, not quantity. Even adult club players should not be hitting the scrum machine more than 50 times a week, no matter how many teams they play for. Seems a lot, really. And please remember, at least 2/3 of your scrum training should be done away from the machine. Now let's look at some key factors of scrum engagement. Position correctly on referee's call. Crouch. Front rows are a safe distance apart. Crouched and bound. Touch. Feet, hips and shoulders are all square. Bend at the knees and hips. Shoulders above hips at all times. Head up, chin off chest. Weight off the heels and on the balls of the feet. Drive from a low position up. Back straight, spine in line. Eyes focused on the target area. Tight head binds onto the middle of the opposing loose head's lower back. Loose head binds onto the middle of the opposing tight head's lower back. Binding should be firm and held until the scrum is complete. But what do I do if the scrum goes wrong?
Just remember, when we're doing any drills, safety factor. So the one thing obviously we're looking at is our necks and our heads. So during an exercise that we're doing, or in a game situation, if it your feet slip or whatever and we go to the ground, we're collapsing, what is the safest place for your head to be? Chin on your chest. So if it happens to slip, the golden rule is face in the mud or cheeks in the mud. Okay, let your feet go out the back, just fall flat down so your face just goes into the mud quietly or your cheek into the mud. So in a game situation or training, good technique, something happens, it's collapsing, our feet slip out the back, we put our face directly into the ground as such. Head is always in flat position. Okay, break.
When it comes to injury management and reporting, a great place to start is with a bit of first aid training. You're in control of a physical and competitive contest, so some first aid knowledge will give you the confidence to offer assistance to injured players on the field if necessary. And it will help you manage those little niggles and strains referees suffer from time to time. If you're interested in learning more about injury management, St John runs classes specifically designed for sports injuries. You can contact them by calling 0800 First Aid or visit their website stjohn.org.nz. And please remember, if I have received any serious injury, for example one that requires me to be transported directly from the ground to an emergency department, hospital or after hours medical centre, it's essential you complete a serious injury reporting form on the day the injury occurs and get it into your provincial union headquarters within 48 hours. You can download a copy from rugbysmart.co.nz or coachingtoolbox.co.nz or get one from your local provincial union. If I am concussed or you suspect I might be, don't hesitate. This is my brain we're talking about. Concussion can occur when I receive an impact to the head or body that causes my brain to shake inside the skull. If I am knocked out or lose consciousness, I have obviously sustained a concussion. But it is important to remember that I can be concussed even if I didn't lose consciousness. So don't just assume that I'm fine just because I wasn't knocked out. I could still be in serious trouble. Use the sideline concussion checklist to check me out. It's an essential tool to use to spot the signs and symptoms of concussion. Dazed and confused after a knock? Ask me some questions to check if I'm aware of my surroundings and that my memory is working correctly. Questions like, what ground are we at? What's the score of the game? If I answer any of the questions incorrectly, or I'm very slow to respond, slower than normal that is, the chances are that I've probably sustained a concussion and should not continue to play. Watch for unsteadiness when I stand up or poor balance and coordination, as these are also signs of concussion. I may also complain of other symptoms, such as blurred or double vision, ringing in the ears, sensitivity to light and noise. I may experience nausea or vomiting, a headache, or feel extremely tired or become irritable. If you spot any of these symptoms, I should not return to play even if I want to. Now let's be serious about this, guys. If I am concussed, I'm often unaware of these symptoms and may want to continue playing. I could even get quite stroppy, insisting that I'm fine and can play on. This is a good indication that I am almost certainly suffering from a concussion, so it's even more imperative that my coach and the referee take responsibility for my well-being, assess me, and make an informed choice about whether I should return to play or not. If in any doubt, I must be removed from play. And keep a close eye on me even after you take me off the field. Sometimes the symptoms of concussion might not show up immediately and only appear in the changing shed or even later. As the coach, you should make certain that I have a buddy who will make sure I'm not left alone for the first 4 hours and get me home safely for my parents or guardian to monitor. Give the concussion advice slip from the concussion checklist to me and my guardian so everyone knows what to watch for over the first 24 to 48 hours. Remember, I might not realise that I am showing signs of concussion, so I need to be watched. Like I said, this is my brain we're talking about. If I show any signs of worsening headache, increased drowsiness or can't be woken up, vomiting, increased confusion or agitation, weakness in any limbs, slurred speech, loss of consciousness or seizure, I should not return to sport until I'm symptom-free and I've been medically cleared. I must not play or train for a minimum of 3 weeks. That's our minimum stand-down period for concussed players, and it applies at all levels of New Zealand domestic rugby. If I return too soon, while symptoms are still present, it will slow my recovery and put me at risk of further concussions. If I sustain a second concussion before the previous one is fully resolved, the impact will be more severe and can in some instances be fatal. And the only way I can come back earlier is if I've been cleared by a neurological expert who puts me through a raft of tests. That's what happens at the professional level. Here's a guide to my recovery from concussion. We should all know it. Even after the mandatory 3-week stand-down, if I've been concussed, I should not return to play until I've been cleared to do so by a medical professional. Check that this has happened, and don't just take my word for it. The recovery position is used to maintain an open airway on an unconscious casualty when they are breathing. Turn the casualty onto their side. If injury allows, bend the upper leg and arm to stabilise, or use a bystander to keep in this position. Tilt the head back and hold in this position. The tongue will be held forward and away from the back of the throat. This keeps the airway open. Check for any foreign bodies in their mouth. When the injury is apparently the result of an accidental fall, collision, or other trauma, the risk of spinal or neck injuries should be assumed. Movement of spinal injured victims runs the risk of causing permanent paralysis or other such injuries, and is best left to trained medical personnel. They should be moved to a recovery position only when it is necessary to drain vomit from the airway. Soft tissue injuries are the most common injuries in rugby to both players and referees. So what are they? Soft tissue injury is damage of the soft tissue of the body. These types of injuries are a major source of pain and disability. These are mainly the sprains, strains, tears and bruises that affect ligaments and muscles. As a referee, you can help yourself recover quicker from these injuries if you follow the 5-step process for treating them. Remember that? It's RICED. R-I-C-E-D. Rest. Staying off the injury is vital for healing and ensuring no further damage is done. So don't continue when it's obvious that you're only going to make things worse. Ice, compression and elevation all reduce swelling and internal bleeding. You need to keep ice on the injury for 20 minutes and then repeat this every 2 hours for the first 48 hours. And in between, you need to keep a compression bandage on it and keep it elevated, as this reduces swelling. Both teams involved in your game should have ice available, but if there's none around, then at least make sure that compression is used. And remember, you need to get the injury diagnosed by a health professional and follow their advice. You want to referee, but sometimes returning too early just makes things worse. If you are carrying an injury, this can affect your decision-making on the field, and we players need you at your best. That first 48 hours is critical. So to make sure I don't cause any more harm than I already have, it's pretty important that I avoid heat, alcohol, running and massage in that time, as they will all make things worse. And what about these? Did you know that over 40% of dental injuries happen at training? How come? Must be all that contact that we have in our trainings nowadays. Yet sometimes we don't wear them. How dumb is that? Since the mouthguard was made compulsory several years ago, the downward trend in rugby dental injuries has been amazing. Mouthguards work. But to work properly, they must be in at all times. Training nights are just like games. Injuries can happen, so make sure I'm wearing my mouthguard. There are 145,000 players like me, so thanks a million for making the effort to be rugby smart and make our game safe for us to play. And remember, what you do keeps me safe.